Welcome, everybody, to the Competition Archery Media Podcast, where we explore all things pertaining to competition archery. I'm your host, PJ Riley, and the CAM Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, O'Neill's Classic Archery. With us today, we have a special guest fresh off his first ever ASA shootdown in the Open Pro class, Justin Martin. Justin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Justin, tell us, you've been shooting for 9 years in the pro class and Open Pro, you made your first shoot down. How did that feel?
Felt great. It felt like a monkey off my back finally for ASA. I made it in IBOs, NFAA stuff, OPA, but for some reason ASA, I think it's mostly mental, but for some reason ASA has always eluded me. So I finally cracked the ice and didn't miss it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points this time. So finally made it. So
I mean, I haven't been around for 9 years as long as you've been shooting, but I know you've been close in the time that I've been there. You're always someone that I know I have to go check on.
Yeah, it feels like if I have a remotely decent weekend, it's always like we get done and looking around. I'm like, wow. So I missed that one by 3 points, and I shot an 8 just off the 12 on that one back there. That was awesome. So I've been that guy for a long time, it feels like.
What was the reception then when you got home? Because I know I saw lots of people on there saying, way to go, Justin. Yeah, there's Justin in the finals. I'm sure you heard about it when you got back home.
Oh, yeah. My phone, that whole night and the next day, my phone was going crazy. And I mean, that's probably the craziest my phone's ever went for a 5th place finish. So I can only imagine what that first win will be like. But yeah, it was definitely awesome. And everybody, lots of people were watching at home, and it was really, really cool to see all the support. So,
well, I know I've told you before, and I wanted to tell the viewers, your wife, Brandy, shoots women's pro as well. And so you guys finished. Of course, I know that you're in the shoot down. And so the women, it took them a little bit longer to finish their round. And so Brandy was sitting there, and I didn't know if you guys had texted or anything yet. And so I just went up, I said, hey, Brandy, Justin made the shoot down, right? And she turned around and her face just went white, blank. And she's like, what? And I said, Justin, he made the shoot down. And she like burst into tears. And then she stopped for a second. She said, you're not messing with me, are you? I said, no. It just then her dad came over and showed her the photo of the scores.
Yeah,
I just thought that was great.
It's funny. I think the most nervous person was probably her dad out of the whole thing, because he was walking down and talking to me because Brandy was so close, like right there, 5th to 6th, almost all day. And
right.
Then he asked me how it was going. I think it was right after our 10th target. And I just kind of gave him a little grin. I said, it's going good. I never saw him the rest of the day after that. He just but yeah, it's it's really cool too, because I mean, I've been a lot closer going into the second day a lot of times, and honestly, going into the second day, not that I didn't think I could do it, but I wasn't expecting to do it, I guess. And
right.
I think he probably almost had the same thought, like, well, probably not. But I mean, I was far enough back to where I'm like, I'm going to have a big day to make it. And it just.
And you did, what did you shoot the second day? It was a big score.
It was 22.
Yeah, 22 up.
Yeah. So I was 4 up after the first day with 1-8. So I only shot 3 12s the first day. And I was telling Brandy and our friend Wayne, I'm like, I feel like I could shoot exactly the same way I did today, and it'd be like 20 up, just a little different luck, a little different breaks. And the second day, I guess I got the breaks. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. So Brandy has been in a couple of these shoot downs over the years. Did she have any good advice for you that you were like, oh, that's a good tip to know?
No, it's, she's been in a few of them, and she shot really well. And, she knows I'm pretty laid back, and it takes quite a bit for me to actually get nervous anymore. So,
gotcha.
I'm not going to say I wasn't worked up the second day towards the end a little bit, and, in the shoot off, but it's not like it used to be. I mean, I used to get nerved up, on target number 1 of the weekend, and it doesn't really hit me until it actually matters anymore, I guess. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned, about shooting your bow exactly the same way. You just didn't hit the rings, need a little bit of luck. And in the broadcast, Nathan Brooks was talking about, he was like, hey, these archers have the skill and the talent and all that, and sometimes you just need the luck. And it strikes me in that game, I mean, I'm just shooting it in my backyard, but it's like, for me, I'm aiming at where I think that ring is, and sometimes I hit it and sometimes I don't.
Right. Well, and I mean, the first target on Friday I shot, and it felt like a perfect shot. Yardage was perfect. I was about much far of the 10 ring, or that much left of the 12 for a 10. And I'm like, okay, well, the first 5 targets or so, I probably had, I finally gave it some clicks, and then I hit right of one. So I had about 3 12s that I kind of lost from getting dialed in, I guess.
Right.
And after that, I felt like I shot really well and just wasn't hitting. And then the second day, I felt like I was shooting the same and they were hitting. So
yeah. It's amazing, that game, when you can't, see what you're aiming at, like indoors. I mean, there's no doubt where you need to hit.
Right. And, I've heard Dan talk about it a lot of times too. Just, feels like you do everything right. And you almost want to be frustrated on days like that because, feel like I should have scored better, but I also don't know what I could have done differently to get any more points. So
yeah.
It's just not your day, and sometimes it can't be. So
amazing. So I wanted to talk now about archery and how you got into that. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, like most 3D shooters, I guess, it was basically for hunting purposes. I think I got my first bow when I was about 4 or 5 from Christmas from my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And as I got a little older, I think I bought my first bow that I was actually planning on hunting with when I was like 13, something like that. And, I was just obsessed with it. I just shot all the time. I wanted to be good enough to where I didn't have to worry if I was going to make a good shot on a deer or not. I just wanted to, feel like it was going to be easy, work my butt off. Shot a lot, with my neighbors, actually. We would stand outside and shoot 15 yards on the deer target after dark, have the garage lights on, all that stuff. And one day they came home with plaques, and I was always the kid that never played any sports. I never had trophies like all my friends did and stuff. And they came home with plaques from a 3D shoot. I'm like, what? So they're explaining this stuff to me, and I said something to my dad. I'm like, I want to do that. And so it was probably about another year and a half after that. We went to one, and then we went to another one, and it was right at the end of the 3D season. So it kind of fell to the wayside at that point. And the next year we went to a couple more, and there was a master schedule for all the local clubs, and they had, a list, and then they had the IBO list in there too. And it's all, what's this world championship thing? And started looking into it. And my mom and dad asked if I was able to qualify, if I'd like to go to the world championships that year. And I'm like, yeah. And yeah, it kind of snowballed ever since.
So when was that? How old were you there?
I went to my first world championship in 2008. So I was 15 at the time.
Oh, okay.
I shot the YMR 15 to 17 class, which is an open class. And at the time it was 45 yards. I was the guy that walked out there with a hunting bow and
yes.
Didn't know what I was doing. I had a black. I think I shot 2 11s the whole weekend and was like 100 and something down. So it was, I was hooked at that point.
But did you come home with all of your arrows?
I do remember I missed 2 targets, and I think I did find both of the arrows. So I think I did.
That's how I measured my success in the early days. The very first 3D I went with like 8 arrows, and I came home with none. So you did better than me. And now all this, you grew up in Ohio as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you get into the IBO. then you go pro. You've been 9 years, so.
It was 2014 was my rookie year.
Gotcha. What made you say, hey, I want to do this professionally?
I just, once I started doing it and, seeing like, especially at the time, Levi, it still is, one of the best, if not the best to ever play it. And these guys just seemed like they were so, like a tight group of guys, and they, able to do it for a living. And at the time, I'm like, man, that'd be awesome to shoot a bow for a living. So I kind of, made that a goal at the time. Realistically, did I truly believe that I'd ever maybe be in the pro class? Yeah, but I don't know, I guess. I was competitive 1 year in the open class. And I finished third at Worlds that year. And one of my good friends he was shooting really well, and everybody was, kind of telling him, hey, you should go pro. And we started working together, and he was kind of dragging his feet about it. And one day I was like, hey, I'll tell you what, you go pro, I'll go pro with you. Like, we'll do it together, and so he kind of thought about it. I was like, all right, let's do it. So and then, I mentioned something, hey, if we're going to do it, maybe we should go to ASAs. I'd never shot an ASA at this point. And,
right.
Okay, fine. We'll hit the whole thing. We're going to do it. We're going to do it all the way. So yeah, that was pretty much, I wasn't one of the smarter ones probably that won my way out of anything. And I've never really won anything, but here I am. So
when you started there, how were you supporting yourself? How were you able to pay for archery and all those things like that?
Fortunately, I still lived at home. And so I was working at a different string company, actually, and working a lot of hours and still living at home with my parents. And, it kind of allowed me to be able to afford to go. I mean, it was pretty much everything that I was making went into it pretty much. Honestly, even all the way up till a few years ago, everything, it was all coming out of our own pockets. So it's definitely expensive, but it's, something I told myself I would never let myself give up on unless it got bad enough. So
it hasn't gotten there yet. Yeah,
it hasn't gotten there yet. Here at least.
So we should let people know what you do for a living now. Yeah.
So I work at Rogue Bowstrings. I kind of do most of the office stuff, I guess. I think my technical title's customer service manager. I also run our pro staff, so I'm the pro staff coordinator as well. Pretty much any orders and everything, it all winds up funneling through me one way or another. And, bow specs, all that kind of stuff. Just try to keep everything running as smoothly as possible.
Gotcha. So folks out there who want their Rogue Bowstrings, Justin is going to give him his personal cell number so you can call him any time of night or day.
Well, I've got enough texts and calls coming in all the time. I don't know what it would hurt. Now that you made a shoot down like that, for you, what does that do? Is that like the fuel that's like, all right, man, now I got to work harder or do whatever to get back to that? Or do you change things? Do you keep doing what you're doing? How does that motivate you? Yeah, it's definitely motivating. I think more than anything, it just gives me the confidence to know that I can get there. I think I'm realistic enough to know that it's not going to make it any easier, but I think just knowing that I can now, instead of kind of having that little bit of doubt in the back of my mind, like, oh, don't mess this one up like you did that other one, and just knowing that I've done it before, I think, will help hopefully get back there many more times. So
yeah. I should ask, folks always talk about known versus unknown. In the ASA, they have both. You can pick or choose. And I've always been a fan, probably because I grew up, Pennsylvania. That was what we had, was IBO. I just find myself gravitating towards judging. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just like that game. I'm guessing that's the same for you, or how come you stick with the unknown judging game? Yeah,
when I started, I didn't even know indoors existed. It was just, only unknown 3D was all I knew. And then it wasn't until the next year that I was shooting that I joined a local league, 5-spot league, and they had to explain to me how scoring worked. I'm like, really? You stand here at 20 yards and you know how far it is and you just shoot over and over again? Okay. And so it was, like I said, when I started, it was 45-yard open stakes with a hunting bow. So, I mean, 20 yards, seeing it and everything, I mean, it was a completely different world. Obviously, once I got into it more and really, that's a completely different world.
Yeah.
As it seemed at the time. But no, so I love the unknown game. It really makes you think a little bit more, I guess. And I mean, I'll be honest, the last few years, I normally, the couple of weeks before OPA, which I've always loved OPA. It's one of my favorite ones of the year, but I get bored practicing for OPA. And I put in a lot of time, getting my sight tape right and everything, but I don't know, just, walking out there and, okay, I'm going to shoot this one from here. And then after a while, it's like, this is kind of boring. I'm going to go back to judging. I'm going to start judging with my OPA bow now for some reason. So
nice.
But it gives you something to think about. And it's more, I feel like it's more rewarding. And, you actually have the risk and reward factor in there. And if you make a mistake, you can make up for it. Where I feel like the known, it's more, if you miss, you kind of just lost out on those points instead of, okay, I shot an 8, I can shoot a 12 and make up for that and come back. So I don't know. I love the unknown game. I love IBOs. I just love archery. So
I know that if it's a long target, especially because those are my Achilles heel, and it's like 46, 47 yards, and I judge it and I hit right where I was aiming, man, I get what you're saying. That is way more rewarding than if I range it and hit what I was aiming at. Both are miracles, but
if it's a long target like that and you judge it, you get to kind of do the strut and walk off the stake. Feel really cool about yourself. So
exactly. So now, Brandy, tell us how you met her. I'm guessing through archery, and when you met her.
Yeah, we met in 2012 at Erie, Pennsylvania for an IBO Triple Crown. So I was shooting open at the time, and she was still in female youth. And we were going out to shoot, and she was at the tent waiting on a group, and she just needed to shoot 10 targets. So we're like, well, you can tag along with us, whatever. So, her dad was there, and we talked to her dad and her a little bit throughout the course, and, kind of went about our business. And I messaged her on Facebook a little while later, it's like, hey, nice meeting you, all that. And, I guess over the years we kind of talked more and more, and then we wound up together. So
nice. How is that, having someone like that, having your wife to do all these things that you do?
Yeah, it's definitely a godsend. It's, if you need somebody to talk to and they actually understand what you're going through, and, also having, I would say it makes it a lot easier to be able to do this and be able to do what I want to be able to do and have somebody to share it all with. It makes it a lot easier. Your partner has the same passion as you do. So
yeah, that's definitely cool. So for you, to this point, what would you rate as your highest points in archery so far to date in your career? And that can go back to before you were pro. Just when you think about your archery career, you're like, man, these are my high points so far.
So my last tournament in open, I finished 3rd at IBO Worlds, which that was the first tournament that I went to. And it's basically been our family vacation ever since. So that's one that's really special to me. And I've always wanted to win it. I finished with 3/8 at that one on the last 3 targets and lost by a point.
Oh,
so obviously I'm completely over it. But finishing 3rd at Worlds was awesome. I've indoor national shoot off. That one was, that's one that surprised myself.
Yeah.
OPA, that OPA was my only podium finish as a pro so far at like a major tournament. And I would say the finally cracking the ice at the ASA a couple weeks ago would probably be the highest points for me so far. Hopefully more to come. So
that's cool. The other people on the range. Now, we got to see, of course, a lot of the reaction with Sam Smith because, there were lots of circumstances involved there. But what was the reception from the other guys when you got in? Because obviously they also know that this is the first time you've made it in there and you've been around, so you know them all.
Right. And it was crazy for me. I've always known how supportive everybody is in our class, but as we were getting towards the end, I could feel the guys in my group, like just do it, like don't do anything stupid. Like they just kept saying, like we'd come up on a long one. And they're like, just get a 10, move on. Actually I 12 that Wolverine, with 4 targets left. I 12 that Wolverine, and I had shot with Joseph Goza at the last one when I shot that 5. And we were walking down there and he turned around. He's like, that was the one you 5'd in Fort Benning, wasn't it? And I was like, yeah. He's like, the whole time you were aiming, I was just standing back there like, please just get a 10, just get a 10. So, and Hacker, I've shot with Hacker so many times and he's given me so many threats for being stupid over the years. And he came over a couple of times and was like, dude, do it, like get in there. So it was really cool. And, it was afterwards, everybody was coming over and giving me hugs and it was pretty overwhelming, but it was an awesome feeling. So
I know when I was coming up to check your score, they were all the other guys in your group. They would come up if you were, over on the stake or whatever. They were making sure they were like, oh, he's still in it. Where's he at? They wanted to know, what did this guy do? Is he still, in contention? So they definitely were tracking things and following where it was going.
I was more, I don't know. I guess I wasn't really, I knew where I was at, but I wasn't really thinking. With 5 targets left, you had told me like there was guys at 22, 20, 18, and I think I was at 20. And at that point, there really wasn't any doubt in my mind that I was going to make it. I'm like, yeah, that it's happening today. And I hit 3 out of the last 4, which obviously sealed it, but it definitely helped that we finished on one of, if not the shortest targets on the range. On the last target, I had to lead off on our next to last one, which was kind of a longer aoudad, and all I wanted was a 10. I was way more nervous on that one than I was on the last one we finished on. So
right, yeah. When you come down to that last target, because it's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know where you're going to start, where you're going to finish. Where your group is going to start, but as to what target it is. All that plays into that luck. Like, what if you ended on the hardest target on the course or something like that?
And needed a 12 to make it in or something like that. Yeah. Like, well, and it was really helpful, what you guys do this every time, but, you coming over every target, let me know what everybody else did and where everybody's at. With 2 left, I had that longer aoudad and the short target on the last one to finish. And kind of where the scores were, I'm like, okay, if I shoot 2 10s, I should be good. So I'm going to make sure to try to get a 10 on this aoudad. And if I need a 12 on the last one, I give myself a chance at it. And once I 10 that one and kind of, you came back over when I was getting ready to shoot that last one and kind of said where everything was, I was like, okay, I just need a 10. That makes this a lot easier. So,
Is that when you see me coming in those last 5, am I making you nervous or do you want to get the information? I never know. I'm always like, am I bugging them? I don't know. Are they going to come over and be like, get out of here?
I'm pretty sure almost everybody on the range wants to know at that point. You might occasionally have somebody that's close that would rather not know, but I think most of us want to know, so we know, especially with the last couple of targets, okay, do we need a 12 or do we just need a 10? So
yeah.
We don't have the luxury to know, but in our case, it seemed like we did that time, so it was nice.
What did you think of that new facility? Camp Minden, this is the first time we've been there, so it was new to everybody. You've been around to the ASAs, the IBOs, the OPA locations. What was your impression of what you saw there?
It seemed like a really nice really nice property, really nice ranges. Parking was really good. My only complaint was it's like 15 hours away from my house. So if they could pick it up and move it a little bit closer, but other than that, I mean, it seemed like a really great place. It seemed like there's a lot of room to grow there and everything. So I definitely can see a good future there. And obviously I shot pretty well there, so I'm happy with it.
I've heard from people who were talking about the ranges, and they were like, they weren't necessarily, your average shot wasn't necessarily super long, but they were like, but the shots weren't easy either. It was that kind of your perception as well?
Yeah. And a lot of times I think those kinds of courses are harder just because you actually really have to think. We've shot some ranges in the past where it's like everything feels like it's 45 to 50. And after a while, you get in a rhythm and it just seems really easy when they're bringing them in and out like they did and really mixing it up. It seems like it's harder for me on those kinds of courses. Like it's a lot easier to mess up one of those ones and shoot some trying to hit 12s and stuff. So being way too aggressive when you shouldn't be and all that stuff. So
how would you characterize like your style of judging? I've heard all kinds of ground judging, target judging. Some people do everything. What's your approach when you walk up to a target?
I've always been more of like, look at the target and just get a feel like what, I guess, just kind of almost instinctive, I guess, just look at it and kind of get a number. The last couple of years, I've been working a lot more on ground just as a second reference more too. And really just trying to figure out, been getting a little bit better at learning when I'm about to make a mistake, which has been my problem in the past. So shooting enough of these after a while, it's like, I feel like a lane like this has gotten me on this target before, and wind up saving myself some points there. So, but yeah, mostly target body, because that's the only thing they can't take away from us is the target itself.
Right.
If we have the ground available, I'll try to use that as a second reference. So.
Gotcha. And do you usually find, like, is it more often that your instinct is right, or do you find that your ground judging often overrules your instinct?
Normally my instinct. If I walk up to one and it's, I walk up to it and it's a javelina that's like 47-ish yards, I might look at it and think I might be pretty close. But like if I walk up to something, I say, well, that looks like it's 47 yards, and I go off the ground and maybe it's a little bit closer, like 45 or so. I'm probably going to lean a little bit more towards my instinct, but I might cut a half yard or so off of it just to try to make sure I don't go high, depending on what it is and what my tendencies are on it. And yeah, there's a lot going on up in here that's not good all the time. So
that's the thing that amazes me about that game is the difference between 44 and 47 yards, that's 3 steps. You're taking 3 steps, but you're all the way back there. And if you make that mistake, that can be the difference between a 10 and a 5. But if you hit that 12, just to get that number that exact, to me, I think that's why I'm just fascinated. That's why I hang with you guys, because I just like seeing that level of, to be able to do that to me is a special skill, I think. Right.
And that, and you got to kind of learn your tendencies on the targets too. And typically the Wolverine's one that I underjudge, and that kind of going back to Fort Benning again.
I hate that target. I hate it.
I added a couple yards like I normally do judging it. And, I was like, that should be a good 10, nothing too crazy. Just normally that hits behind my pin if I judge and add 2. Well, that time I judged it and added 2, and it went barely over the 12 for a 5. So, that's a 7-point difference trying to be smart. And it's a really fine line we walk out there. That's for sure, to, try to hit the 12s and not give points back. So,
well, in the shootdown, did you notice at all, and did it have any effect on you when Dan McCarthy gets up there on the first target and shoots a 5?
It didn't really have an effect on me. I mean, truthfully, going into the shoot off, I almost wasn't paying that much attention to Dan unless it was going to turn into a train wreck, just because Dan doesn't normally make any mistakes.
Right.
So for me to try to make 14 points up on Dan in the shoot off, it's probably a long shot. I was kind of thinking more about the podium, but it definitely caught my attention a little bit when he shot that 5, because I'm like, okay, now I'm within 9. So, if I can execute my game plan, maybe I'll have a chance. But it didn't quite go that way. So
I thought, oh man, I can't believe I was like, am I looking at the right target? I don't even know the last time I saw Dan shoot a 5 anywhere.
Well, I've been seeing, in the women's and seniors, there was a lot of them that were going high on that target. And
yeah.
It looked like it was out there. It wasn't quite as out there as it looked, obviously, but that was a tricky target. And especially, he started on that one too.
Right.
So, the kind of, I guess, anxiety I had on the hyena was probably magnified for him starting on the longest one. And it was that little sketchy guy. So
yeah.
But yeah, the second target, after we shot, I looked over to see what he did, and he 12 did, obviously. So he's back. I'm like, okay, I'll stick to paying attention to second, third again, unless he makes another mistake. So,
what is your least favorite target?
It depends tournament to tournament. It seems like for some reason this year the javelina I've been underjudging him like crazy. I've been playing the upper game for a full year now, and this past weekend in Louisiana, I gave him everything I could and aimed center 10 like I normally do, trying to hit the upper, and I hit a low 10 on it. So,
no kidding.
Right now it seems like it's the javelina.
Man, what do you think about it? That is it just. What do you think about it that there is a target that affects people like that? Do you think like it kind of feeds on itself, like? The more you fail at it, the more you hate it, and the more you're afraid of it.
Yeah, and I think too, if there's a target that's really just kicking your butt, it seems like it really sticks in the back of your mind, and then the next time you shoot it, maybe you break a weak shot with a light number, and it makes it worse because you're not confident on it. So, obviously that's going to happen for everybody. Everybody's got that target, but you just got to try to execute a strong shot and just believe it's right, even if it's not. And, try not to let it build over time and get worse and worse.
So for Justin Martin, what's next for you? What are your big goals out there when you sit down and assess what's in the future? What stands out to you? Like, this is what I want to do.
Well, I've got a lot of goals. And really, obviously making an ASA shoot-off's been one of them. But it's never been the end goal, I guess, to make a shoot-off. So there's a lot of things I want to win and a lot of things I'm kind of working towards. I try to keep my goals a little bit more to myself so I don't jinx them. Have people know what I'm going after. So, but obviously we all want to win every tournament we go into, and, everything that we're involved in, we want to try to win. So, just trying to be the best I can and hopefully get some wins along the way and, build something. So
what is your practice regimen? Like a typical week where you're working in the office, where does practice fit in? What do you do?
Yeah, normally, depending on the season, if it's indoor season, there's a club on the way home I normally stop at just about every day, and I'll shoot a round, or, depending on how close we are to a tournament or something, I'll shoot as much as I can. Like right now, it's storming outside right now. I can hear it thundering. But I would typically be trying to get home, and shoot around on the targets that we have. And, just depending on how things are going. If everything goes good, I might stop after a few targets. If not so much, I might keep shooting. If it's storming like it is right now, I might go home and, stand in the garage, blank bail a little bit, something like that. Just try to shoot or judge every day that I can, and just keep myself in as good a shape and mentally strong as possible. So
yeah. So every day there is some shooting for Justin Martin. Yeah.
There's a very rare occasion that, I might just, by the time I get home, like, you know what, I've been shooting good. I'm just going to relax tonight and give myself the night off. But it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. And well, that raises a question. What is your setup? How much weight are you pulling on that bow?
Yeah. So I'm shooting the Martin Legend 730, the Jeff Hopkins series bow. I'm shooting it at 73. I think it's 73 and a half pounds, something like that.
Man.
My arrows, I'm shooting gold tip X cutters. They weigh 430 and I'm shooting them like right at 294, 295, something like that.
Yeah.
So
what's your holding weight?
I believe it's around 16, 17, something like that. Nothing crazy, just, pretty good middle ground. I don't want it too jumpy, but I also don't want it feel like I'm not holding anything back there. So
yeah. And your release, I don't know if you shoot a thumbie or a hinge.
Yeah. I've been a thumb guy for a long time. I shoot a thumb. I shoot it like a hinge, wrap my thumb and just kind of pull and execute till it fires. Shooting the True Ball Blade Pro release. Shot that since they came out with it. Have the Excel Achieve XP sight and scope set up. Running dead center Icon X stabilizers. Boning vanes. Obviously Rogue bowstrings.
What power is your lens?
0, actually.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. You said you shoot no lens.
Yeah, I did shoot a 4-power lens for a long time, and 2 years ago, if it would rain or threaten to rain, I would always take it out, take my clarifier out, all that, because I had a bad experience once with that. And yeah, 2 years ago in 2020, at the first leg of the IBO Triple Crown, the second day it was supposed to rain, so I took my stuff out. And I had always kind of kicked the idea around of shooting without a lens all the time, but just didn't, because the cool thing to do is shoot a lens. So,
yeah.
So and then for the next tournament after that was London, Kentucky. So, and I had been leaving it out for London because I would get terrible glares down there and not be able to see anything. So I practiced for 2 weeks with no lens, and we get down to London, and it was the only year I've ever shot in the bottom where we weren't in the power lines. So I shot that weekend without my lens still because I was getting really comfortable with it, and I've just never put it back in. So I've just stuck with no lens and been really liking it. Feel like it's a little bit more consistent for me, but I've been blessed with pretty good eyesight to this point, so that helps. But
what size is your pin fiber?
Just 10 thousandths, so just as small as I can get.
I can't see 10 thousandths to save my life.
But with no, the 10 thousandths covers, it still covers quite a bit.
Oh, so, yeah, for sure.
Especially you put a Wolverine out there at 50 yards, it looks like it's covering the whole 10 rings. So.
Gotcha.
But it does make it like it's holding a lot steadier. So,
well, yeah, that's what I've been noticing. I've been going back and forth, but I just can't see enough without it. I need to blow something up there. All right. Well, Justin Martin, we certainly appreciate your time today on this stormy afternoon. Thanks for taking time out to talk to us. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and just, I guess I'm glad I could shoot good enough once that somebody wanted to talk to me. So, all right, folks, that is another episode of the Competition Archery Media Podcast. You can find us on all the platforms where you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks for being here today.